This is Twit.
I want to talk a little bit about gamification because more and more companies are using games to add a spoonful of sugar to security training. You know, back in 1964, I, along with the rest of the world, learned that a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. It's not the first time a key principle of gamification was said out loud, but it was probably the catchiest and sung in the best voice. Now, in 2019, tidying up changed hands from Mary Poppins to Marie Kondo, but the idea that making a task enjoyable makes it more likely to be done has been embraced by the business world and cybersecurity training. Now, the Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines gamification as the process of adding games or game-like elements to something such as a task so as to encourage participation. For many responsible for turning new hires from security vulnerabilities into security assets, it's a key strategy in keeping them focused on their training. There are numerous studies that show that gamification not only increases engagement, but increases learning retention, according to Hewlett-Packard Enterprise's cybersecurity awareness manager, Laurel Chesky. She says HPE has increased the degree to which it uses gamification in cybersecurity training because it has seen positive results with the technique. Now, she says that HPE has mandatory basic cybersecurity training, but much more training that is optional. And where they truly use the gamification is getting employees to come back and engage in the optional common sense information of the additional training. She says that if they aren't doing that in a fun, engaging way, they simply won't come back. So they have to do it through gamification. Now, the important thing, she and other experts say, is not just to do gamification, but to do it right. According to Colin Bastable, who's CEO of Lucy Security, gamification is great, but you need variety. He sees gamification as critical as part of a broader strategy. Now, the HPE director says that what they have as metrics reflect that variety. She says, we started off with a very grassroots DIY type of gaming with a web-based trivia game they created, but they have moved on from the in-house created application that was very simple and web-based to something far more sophisticated. The HPE cybersecurity training manager, Joanne O'Connor, says that they created a different game called Fish or No Fish that uses Yammer as a platform. They'll post an image on one of the Yammer channels and ask participants whether it's a form of a phishing email that they've intercepted or not. Employees who provide the correct answer win recognition points that are exchangeable for various prizes. Now, there's a lot of academic research talking about how gamification works and why. But the basic thing is that it is becoming more and more used because companies see it as more and more effective. Now, some people say that this is just a generational tool, that in fact, millennials, Gen Xers, and other younger employees want or need or respond to gamification to a much greater extent than do, well, let's say, baby boomers. But the experts we talked to said that the gamification works all across the age groups, although they do admit that there are differences in the precise types of games that can be more or less effective for different age groups. One way or another, it's highly likely that the next time you change jobs, when you go for training, you're going to find an element of a game in there, because the research has shown that you will learn more and retain more when you do. So I'm going to turn to my co-host. Brian, I'm going to turn to you. Now, I know that you work at a university, but have you seen or taken part in any training that involved games as a platform?
Why, yes, I have. I've actually, in both my lives, I actually had a Jeopardy-like training on federal law enforcement laws, different laws, when I was at the Law Enforcement Education Center in the East Coast someplace. Anyway, that was actually Jeopardy. That was kind of cool. We've also had it in the academic environment when we start dealing with a lot of different things, very complex topics. So when we started doing a lot of things with, say, oceanographic principles and things like that, some of the faculty have actually done it in a game format. I would absolutely love to see cybersecurity training come to the university. I cannot tell you how many times we have people clicking on phishing emails and we're dealing with having to do the cleanup. I'm kind of hoping someone decides to go and package this thing up and make it available to all kinds of organizations instead of just keeping it internal.
Well, I have seen a number of different platforms that are available, both commercial and open source. So it is, in fact, something that a lot of companies can use if they decide they need to. Now, Lou, I want to turn to you. Is this something that you see as a tool that's effective with all different age groups, or is this just something those wild and crazy kids are into when they come into the workforce?
It's definitely effective of all ages as well as all technical experience backgrounds. I think one thing I noticed is I was visiting a company, and one of the people that I was actually shadowing for the day, they got an email that was essentially a phishing attempt. And they, obviously they detected it by just reading through it. They looked at all the cues and they actually detected that it was a phishing attempt. And so they reported it to their IT department. And what found out is they actually ended up getting a gift card because of it. So what they're doing here is they're training their employees, their users, by gamifying the practice of not only training. So they send them through this training to say, hey, we want you to do this and learn these kind of cues that you can look for. But also, when you do actually perform the operation, you're successful, we'll actually give you a reward for that. And I think that really is helpful because it does gamify it. Everyone's like, oh man, I got only 2 of those this week. I can't only get 1 more gift card, that kind of thing. And so I think it's definitely effective. It didn't really matter who the user was or how junior they were in the organization. They were just loving it. And it was actually really training them because they looked for the cues that they needed to look for to be able to detect such things. And so I really think that this can scale really well across the industry and across different disciplines for sure.
Well, Brian, we've heard that you've used it. Lou's talked about his experience. So I guess my question to you is, do you see any real hard limits to gamification? Are there topics or levels of training that you think really should be left to the traditional training methods?
I'm not so sure. Can't think of anything off the top of my head, but realistically, one thing I do want to caution is there can be too much. If we start getting to the point where employees or organizational members expect rewards for correct activity, are we sending the right message? So I love that, the gift card works and things like that, but we need to try and get to the point where people do the correct thing without always expecting a reward, lest we start getting into, well, I didn't get that, so phooey on you, and I'm going to do the exact opposite. I've seen that many times with school children where they got way too involved with just the reward and not learning the actual lesson.
Well, getting people to do the right thing for the right reason may well be beyond the scope of any particular game.